Deep Threat Sports. We're back at it again. This time you got me, Dave. You got Colin over there drinking maybe a little whiskey. Who knows? Down, we got Bryant. He's hanging out, having a good time because the Mizzou Tigers have figured it out a little bit. But again, it's a season of a lot of things going on. Deer season. We got people getting married, all kinds of mess. So good thing is you got all three of us back today. We're going to talk specifically the playoff projection. Like, what are the 12 teams that we're expecting to be in the playoffs? Why are they in the playoffs? And what is our opinion? And this is, us going live to you as we're watching this, so we're seeing at the same rate that you are. And so far, it looks crazy. I mean, I'm going to go ahead and spoil it. We got Arizona State at number 12. Colin, did you see that coming? What's going on?
Yeah, well, first things first, like Dave said, hey, we've been super busy here. Deer season is a holiday to most of us. Thanksgiving coming up. We're going to try to get to you guys again Thursday. We tried to go live tonight, but YouTube just whooped our ass and we couldn't figure it out. We still have some growing pains here with YouTube, and they really put the clamps down, if you guys don't know that out there. So it makes it really tough at times. Would love to make sure we could all get on live there. That would be fantastic. We worked our ass off the last like 10 minutes trying to get it live. But yeah, like Dave said, we're going through this live with you guys as we see it pop up on the screen. And right now it looks like we have Arizona State at number 12, like Dave said. And to be honest with you, Dave, it's not that I didn't see Arizona State at 12. I mean, you kind of saw a team like BYU, who looks to be the team that was going to be up there in the front all season long for the Big 12. It looked like there may have been a time when they had a first round bye coming their way. But what's crazy to me right now is we see Arizona State at 12, like you said, and that leads me to believe that maybe the Big 12 is not going to get any other teams other than Arizona State in. Maybe the Big 12 is not going to get a first round bye, and Arizona State maybe the lone survivor coming out of the Big 12. And you have Arizona State. They've played really damn good. They've definitely exceeded expectations. Cam Scatabo at running back is an absolute stud. I mean, he's a do-it-all kind of guy out of the backfield for them. He is an absolute horse. Kind of goes unrecognized this season because there's been other great running backs throughout the whole entire college football field. So I'm not too shocked to see them at 12. I guess I am still shocked. It's kind of mind-boggling that we see a group of 5 team probably going to work their way up into a first round bye because the best Big 12 team sitting here at number 12. And we all just assumed that the G5 team would always get the 12 seed. Kind of wild here right now. First year in the 12 team playoff. Bryant, how do you feel about this?
Yeah, that's intriguing. Like you just mentioned, we always thought the top 4 buys were going to be to a group of our Power 4 team, ACC, SEC, Big 10, Big 12. But we see here the group of 5 is ranked higher than them, so they move in there, and then the Big 12 team in Arizona State is the 12 seed. So that's very intriguing. Something honestly, I don't think a lot of people talked about much. But credit to Arizona State, they've beaten 2 good teams the past 2 weeks to get in the position where they're at. But I agree with you. I think they may be the only team representing the Big 12 unless something drastic happens these last 2 weeks in the conference title game as well.
Well, right here now coming across the screen, we have number 11, Indiana. So
Hey, Colin,
there's my
dirty
favorite team
work.
of the season so far next to Mizzou, as you guys all know that. Love me some Indiana, love me some Curtis Work. Obviously not a very good performance this last week against Ohio State. I do feel like Ohio State dominated that football game start to finish. I mean, I don't really think Indiana ever had a chance, especially after
First quarter looked good though. First quarter they looked good. First quarter they were.
the first quarter looked okay, but still at that point, I kind of saw an Ohio State team who looked to me like they were dropping back in coverage more, not really trying to flat get after the quarterback. And once they really ramped things up and got after him, it was a totally different story. And Curtis Work couldn't do much. And you saw an Ohio State football team dominating every aspect of the football game. And my opinion right here, right now, I don't think there's any teams 2 teams better than Oregon and Ohio State in the country right now. So I fully expect to see those 2 teams at the top of the charts later. And Indiana hanging in, that's big time, fellas. Indiana hanging in for me makes me happy. I thought there was a world where they maybe didn't hang in. So I'm glad to see them still hanging around here.
And I think this goes back to a point I made before that I think the committee is very very emphatic this season on record rather than strength of schedule or strength of record, because obviously Indiana has the worst strength of schedule and probably the top 25 damn near. So and they only have 1 loss, but so they're 11-1 or 10-1, excuse me, and that's why the committee kept them there, with their only loss being a highly ranked Ohio State, even though it wasn't the greatest showing. But back to that game real quick. I definitely think Indiana can play a lot better than they did. They kind of shot themselves in the foot with punt return for a touchdown, fumbled punt by their own punter that gave Ohio State like damn near goal line goal to go field position on that drive too. So
I think
if they
Rourke
limited,
fumbled on a sack, right? Too. I think they
yeah,
had a fumble on a sack. And to your
if
point, you can't give better teams than you good field position.
absolutely, especially on the road in the Big Ten
So
too. So, I think we can see a better Indiana team. I think they were a little bit shell shocked maybe with some of the things that happened in that game. Even though they came out and scored a touchdown on their first drive, I thought this is going to be a hell of a game, but they kind of came back and the nerves bit them there towards the end.
yeah, absolutely. Dave, go ahead and make the announcement. Who just came across the screen at number 10 here?
We've got SMU, the ACC. I told you guys at the beginning of the year that ACC had something going for them. So looking like SMU and Miami are probably going to face off in the ACC championship. Being realistic, SMU only has Cal left. So, I mean, to be sure, they're going to win that one, right?
I mean, I'm going to be honest with you guys. The way college football has gone so far this season, I'm not going to sit here and tell you that I'm guaranteeing to win from anybody anymore at this point. I mean, I was guaranteeing the Alabama ass whooping on Oklahoma this last weekend, and that did not happen. They never had a chance in that football game. So I'm not going to guarantee you anything, Dave. But yes, I think SMU, in my opinion, looks to be right up there with Miami at this point in the ACC. I don't think there's any chance they drop this football game. I mean, they have the two best players on the field in that football game, and Kevin Jennings and Bashard Smith. So yes, I do think that SMU can handle business. I love seeing SMU right here. They're at the 10 spot. I think that's pretty fair at this point. I have some teams in my mind who I think should be above them, and I think it looks like we might be trending in that direction. But I would love to see an SMU Miami ACC Conference Championship game. I don't know about you, Brian, but bet the over on that one. Whew.
Absolutely. I was going to say the over might be in the 60s on that game before the game's
Good God.
even played because they don't play a lot of defense in their in their games this season. So that'd be an awesome matchup, and it looks like that's what we're going to get here in a few weeks.
Yeah, so right now, too, we have Tennessee at number 9 coming across the screen. Dave, I know you kind of like Tennessee. You cheer them on a little bit here on this show every once in a while. So tell me, are you happy that it's the first SEC team we're seeing at number 9? Real quick, before we go any further, with Tennessee being at 9, I mean, do we think we could see loads of SEC teams coming up?
No way, right?
So, I mean,
I mean,
I think Tennessee at 9 is fair, right? I mean, they're sitting at 9 and
Absolutely.
2. I mean, they are very deserving of this at this point. With their, I mean, a loss to Arkansas, no, was not a good loss at all. It's not a terrible loss, not a good loss, and a loss to Georgia. That's obviously a pretty damn good loss. They did beat Alabama, so I mean, this is a pretty damn good football team. And if Nico can find it, we've been saying that for a while now. But if Nico can settle in, I mean, I know they just beat the shit out of UTEP. That doesn't say much to me. I don't know how they played them in the second to last game of the season, but they did. And if they can settle in, they are pretty lethal down the stretch, I think.
see, this is a prime example of what Brian was talking about, how the committee's not so much looking at strength of schedule. It's more of like you're well, I guess in this situation you could play it two ways, because Tennessee's got 2 losses, SMU's got 1, and SMU's only losses to a BYU team that is still a good, really good team. Like, yes, they're not a playoff team at this point, but they're a lot better than the Arkansas team, and they're a lot better than who did Tennessee lose to? The
Georgia.
Georgia's a good team, but like I just think SMU should be ahead of Tennessee. Like I don't see I don't see how there's a way where they didn't put them ahead of them.
I think that's fair. Hang on, Brian, real quick. What do you have to add about Tennessee, and then we'll kind of debate that back and forth here.
I was going to say that we talked about it many times in the show. I think Dylan Sampson's one of the best running backs in the country.
Yes.
I think if they start leaning on him more, take a little bit off of Nico's plate, I think that could lead them far in these playoffs. Honestly, I think they could be a sleeper team at the higher end of this bracket here to make a run if it stays true to what they're showing right now with these projections.
And their defense. Good Lord, their defense is damn good. I mean, their defense
Yes.
is top tier in the country, in my opinion. And I think once we kind of see the playoff rankings shake out here, I think they have one of the best defenses, probably top 3 in the college football playoff coming forward. And I think they could beat any team on any given day if they put it together. That's a tall ask. I mean, you can say that about a lot of teams, but I do think Tennessee has all the recipes for some serious success in the college football playoff as long as they hang on. They do have a game against Vanderbilt this final week. Obviously, not just a game against Vanderbilt anymore this season. I mean, this is a Vandy team that could go get their ass, and I think this game is at Vandy. So Tennessee needs to do things the right way. Now, to your point, Dave, not to spend too much time on this because we had Georgia come across at number 8 just now. But I think Brian says this a lot to you and I when we start going at each other on where teams fall in line. I think that's a splitting hairs thing. I think they're both happy to get in. I'm anxious to see how the matchups would set up for them being at 9 and 10 on who they would play. And I think Tennessee beats SMU 9 times out of 10 on neutral sites. So I think Tennessee ahead of SMU, in my opinion, is the correct move here. I don't know how you feel, Brian.
I definitely agree with you for exactly what you said. I think they beat them 9 out of 10 times. Much better defense. I don't think SMU's seen a defense like Tennessee if they were to play.
No.
So I think it would be, a pretty, it'd be a good game for sure. I think it'd be high-powered offenses going against each other, but the better defense would prevail, in my opinion, in that game.
So, Dave, we just had Georgia come across the screen at number 8. That's our second SEC team. And do you think this is low or do you think this is right?
Truthfully, I think this is spot on. I really do, because yes, Georgia did all the right things. They beat all the right teams, but they also did all the wrong things. Like, yes, they went on and knocked off Texas, but then they also lost to Bama, which is no longer, a playoff team and not, pretty far down the line when you look at like top 25. But then at the same time,
their two losses are Alabama and Ole Miss. And I'm assuming at this point, if we haven't seen Alabama or Ole Miss come across the screen, Alabama and Ole Miss aren't going to come across the screen, right? So, I mean, to your point, I agree with you totally. I still don't. It's hard for me to swallow the pill that Georgia's only the 8th best team in the country.
I guess for me, it depends on who the next 7 are. Depends on who the next 7 are. Like, there might be somewhere I'm like, I could see that, but then there might be somewhere I'm gonna not be happy about. Like,
this is shaping up. This is shaping up to be there's going to be at least 3 Big Ten teams in here, probably 4, because we haven't talked about some of the guys that have been ranked high all season. So I just think there's better teams left on the table than Georgia, just due to their games this season.
And that's completely fair. I mean, you sit here and you have a win against Texas and Bama. Dude, Georgia dominated that football game after the second quarter. And I know, obviously, the game of football is 4 quarters. But, I mean, Georgia looked totally different in the second half. If they could play that game over again, Georgia beats them. I think if they could play the Ole Miss game over again, Georgia beats. I mean, yes, you can't erase those things, but that's just my thoughts. So it's hard for me to really swallow that pill still. And right here we have Notre Dame come across the screen at number 7. I think if you put Georgia and Notre Dame in the same stadium, Georgia kicks the shit out of them. Just the way I feel.
Absolutely,
maybe I'm wrong.
Absolutely.
I agree with you, but Notre Dame has been on an absolute roll the past 3 weeks.
Yes,
but they have beaten up on probably some overranked military academy teams. Army and Navy, they've been good all season, but they haven't played near the caliber of Notre Dame, and it definitely showed.
I mean, Notre Dame had, like we've talked about this so many times, they have really, really good wins, right? I mean, they beat Texas A&M. I'm looking at it right now. They beat Texas A&M. They beat Louisville. They beat Navy. They beat Army. But they have that bad loss against Northern Illinois, and I cannot get past that. For me, listen, I know they're a playoff team and they deserve it at this point. That loss to me is just such a hiccup on a schedule. Like, could you imagine, let's say Notre Dame goes on a run here and play like they had the last few weeks and they somehow win the national championship, and you get to look back and you get to say, well, who did Notre Dame lose to the year they won the national championship? And somebody's got to look at you with a straight face and say, well, Northern Illinois. I mean, think about that. Seriously, think about that for a second, because that's very plausible at this point.
Absolutely. That's just wild to think about. I think Northern Illinois, I haven't looked at their record recently, but I don't think it's very good. So that is definitely
Northern Illinois is 6-5. 6-5.
Yeah.
With losses to Buffalo, NC State, Toledo, Ball State, and Miami, Ohio.
Oh, wow.
And they beat Notre Dame. And if I'm not mistaken, that game was at Notre Dame, right? That game
it was in South Bend.
South Bend. Yes, I'm looking at it now. It was in South Bend. So They are very deserving. At this point, I'm wrong. Like we said on this show many times, I have no problem admitting when one of us is wrong, and I've been wrong about them. I've just been on their ass since the Northern Illinois game. But like I just said, think about you telling that story if they somehow win the national championship, and you have to tell somebody that their one loss was to Northern Illinois. Just think about that. That's all I'm saying. I mean, that's incredible. That's incredible to me. Hey, they're in as long as they don't botch it to USC this weekend. USC looks horrible, and we're not even going to spend any time on them, but they look like dog shit. So they should handle that. Army game should be tougher for them than the USC football game. Now we have number 6 coming across the screen, and Penn State. Penn State being 10-1, their only loss being to Ohio State, where Dave absolutely loved every minute of that because I was so high on them all season long. Bryant was pretty high on them as well. And I still look back on that game and think there's a world where Penn State should have won that football game. So, hey, they did squeak one out this last weekend against Minnesota. That was one of those games where, like, you're
That was a nail
watching it, and you're
biter.
just like, yes, you're just watching, and you're just like, just get out of the game with the win. Just get out with the win.
Minnesota's been tough this season,
Minnesota's no slouch,
especially
man.
at
They got
home.
tough defense. PJ Fleck, I'm pretty sure. I mean, he's a good coach, but Penn State is a damn good football team, and as long as they hold on and don't do some dumb shit against Maryland, Penn State's in as well. And at this point, let me do some counting here. At this point, we have Penn State and Indiana, so we have 2 Big Ten, 2 SEC, 1 ACC, 1 Big 12, and 1 independent, which would be Notre Dame. So right now, if we look at this, we would have Penn State at the 6 playing Indiana 11. That would be a hell of a matchup.
Yep.
That game would be in Happy Valley at Penn State. We would have Notre Dame playing SMU. That game would be in South Bend. And then we have Georgia, Tennessee. So right there, let me ask you a question.
Rematch.
And yes, and not to speculate on some shit because I don't know if this is what they did. But right here, I see a playoff committee select teams where you have 2 Big Ten teams playing against each other. You have 2 SEC teams playing against each other. And then you have Notre Dame sprinkling in against SMU. But you pair 2 Big Ten and 2 SEC teams against each other for a matchup. How do you feel about that?
I don't know. It's maybe them sending a message a little bit that they want to try to see who's the better teams, and they're going to make that happen in the first round as far as conferences are concerned. It at least seems like that on paper, but I don't know if that's what
Yes.
they were thinking.
Absolutely, all speculation. Obviously, nobody from the committee has called us up on Deep Threat Sports Network and said, "Hey, this is what I'm feeling." But like, that's just the way it looks to me. Is they're like, okay, we're gonna have all these teams from this conference. Let's pair them up against each other for a matchup and shake it down.
I almost would rather if they just didn't allow like same conference teams to play each other, like especially in the first round. Because that's essentially what their conference is, So like, why do we need to see that again? Like, show me different teams, Like at the end of the day, those 12 teams, if you're in those 12 teams, you're saying you can hang with all 12 of these teams. So it don't matter who you play. Like, I almost wish they did like a random drawing live television, and they just pulled a ball out of the thing and said, "Hey, guess what?"
Hey, honestly, dude, I don't disagree. You take your top 4 conference winners, let them have a bye, and then 5 through 12, it's just a draw, man. It's just where you end up.
Yeah,
I don't hate
100%,
that. I
because
don't
it's just
hate that.
fate.
But then you don't really reward for what they've accomplished on the season, right? I mean, I guess that would be the pushback at that point.
Well, how far do you reward though? I mean, I think if you reward the top 4, I think that's reasonable because they're the top 4 teams in the country. Like after 5, anybody could 5 could be a 12, a 6 could be an 11.
Well, to your point, at number 5, we have Ohio State right now, so another Big Ten school. So right now we got 3 Big Ten schools in, and that could right, 1, 2, 3, and we're only staring at 2 SEC schools so far. Yeah, this is dicey. I mean, this obviously means that Boise State gets a first round bye. I would assume that they're going to pop up on the 4 spot, and Ohio State's going to play Arizona State. And I'm here to tell you right now, Ohio State at Ohio State is going to beat the ever-loving dog shit out of Arizona State.
Yeah, that line's going to be like 14. At
Minimum.
least.
Yeah, minimum. Cam Scatterbo, great running back, is going nowhere on Ohio State's defense. That Arizona State offensive line is not getting a push on Ohio State's defensive line. Ohio State will blow them up. That I'll be honest, that is one game that if it was like on a regular Saturday that wasn't college football playoffs, I probably wouldn't tune into.
Yeah, I've always thought this whole season about this bracket. I do think the 5-12 is going to be kind of a not a snooze fest, but it's not going to be must see television like the rest of these games are here on the first week of the playoff, like we've mentioned. But you never know. This makes it a little bit more interesting with Arizona State being a Power 4 team playing the number 5 seed. But we talked about it many times too. You'd almost rather be the 5 seed than the 4 seed because you get the 12 as a matchup the first week, and then you play the lowest top 4 with a bye too. So if I was Iowa State, I like where I'm at.
Yeah, and Boise State is at number 4. So if you're looking at Ohio State right now, they're going to have, and correct me if I'm wrong, Brian. I mean, we talked a while back how the bracket doesn't reseed. We wished it reseeded because I feel like that would make things way more entertaining almost. But if the way the bracket falls right, Ohio State plays Boise State if Ohio State beats Arizona State.
Correct.
So then Ohio State's, this fell right into their lap. If this is exactly how it ends, look out, everybody in this bracket.
I mean, Ohio State has a fast track to the semis for sure.
I just want to see Boise State win at least one game in the playoffs. Like, I know I haven't been the biggest fan of Boise State, but at the same time, they haven't been playing real good on this last stretch. Ashton Genty, he's been doing his job, but I just think
Ohio State. I love Ashton Genty. You guys know this. But if you're Ryan Day in Ohio State going to play Boise State,
let him throw the ball. Let him sling it.
Yeah, make them beat you throwing the football, and don't let Ashton Genty rush for 100.
I'm making Maddox Madsen throw the ball 45 plus times.
100%.
I'm putting 9 or I'm putting 8 or 9 in the box.
Oh, I'm with you. I'm putting 9 in the box.
I'm putting 9 in the box, and I'm pressing corners on the outside.
Yeah, I'm playing 2 cornerbacks. I'm gonna let Denzel Burke and Igbinosun just be like, "Hey, fellas, this guy is not gonna beat you deep. Keep the play in front of you. We got the run game. Don't worry about his arm. He's going nowhere against you." Yeah. So I mean, and 3 Miami kind of fell behind here. 3 Miami, 2 Texas, 1 Oregon. I don't think any of us are shocked to see those 3 pop up after the way everything kind of shook out. I do want to note one thing. I think the Texas A&M game, we've talked about that on this network a few times. I think that's a very intriguing matchup. That game is in College Station. I think of the top 4 teams, I think they by far have the hardest game remaining. Oregon plays I'm trying to draw a blank. Let me pull this up real quick so I get this right. Oregon plays Washington. As long as nothing ignorant happens, Oregon is fine. Texas plays Texas A&M. Miami plays Syracuse. And Boise State plays Oregon State. So,
Miami might have a hard game with Syracuse, truthfully. Syracuse is kind of figuring it out. I think they're 6-3.
Syracuse is 8-3. They're okay. They have their hiccups. I don't. At this point, the only thing for Syracuse is they're sitting in the locker room saying, "Hey, we want to play spoiler," right?
Yeah,
other than that,
absolutely.
The only way Syracuse has a chance in that game is if Kyle McCord does not throw like 8 interceptions, which he has the tendency to do this season.
Miami's pass defense is not the best at times. So, I mean,
I think that'll be a closer game.
Arm talent. Yeah.
I think that'll be a closer game than we think on paper.
Well, looking at it right now, that spread is 10.5. Let's just look at that real quick. Oregon has Washington. That's a 19.5 point spread. Good. Yeah. Texas is at Texas A&M. That is a 5.5 point spread for Texas. And then Boise State has Oregon State, and that is sitting at a 19.5 point spread. So yes, Texas by far has the hardest uphill battle, but Miami's is no slouch. I'll agree with you guys on that. I do think this is a moment where, for me, Cam Ward has one last run at this Heisman conversation. Do I think he has any chance at this point? No. But I think for me, if I'm him in that locker room, I'm like, okay, this is the moment. They're giving us a first-round bye. Fulfill the moment. Go into the ACC championship being the favorite. Make it where even if we lose the ACC championship, they still want to put us in the college football playoff. That is my mindset if I'm Mario Cristobal and Cam Ward in this Miami football team.
Yeah, if I'm Cam Ward, I'm trying to put up like 500 yards of offense in that game and just make an absolute statement.
Yes, yes. Silence the critics and do your job at this point. I I'm looking at this and I don't think I'm looking at the 12 teams right now, and who were the first two out? Clemson and Alabama.
Nope.
Yes.
I'll be honest, fellas, I'm extremely shocked right now that there's only 3 SEC schools, and I know that's not me trying to be a homer or anything. And I can't. If you ask me the question, who am I leaving out? I cannot answer that question. I cannot give you my answer to that question. I think what I see happening going forward is I think you would have Miami SMU in a big ACC championship game, and if Miami beats SMU handily, I think SMU will be on the outside looking in, and I think that's where you could see an Alabama slide back in. And I had a conversation today with a buddy of mine, actually Bryant, your cousin today, about how we both agree that if somehow Alabama slides into the 12th spot, they could be a team that goes in and beats any team any given day in that playoff and somehow find themselves in the national championship.
Oh, I definitely agree. They just had a down week this past week. That offense is still explosive, and the defense has been playing well, other than last week. But I mean, obviously, Oklahoma really didn't play that good on offense. They just had a pick six and a few other things go their way too. So I agree with you. If Alabama could somehow sneak in with 3 losses, they'd be a team I would not want to play.
No, and I think you saw this last week, and we talked about this so many times on this show, where Alabama is a team that relies on Jalen Milroe's legs and explosive plays to Ryan Williams, and I think you saw an Oklahoma defense do their job and take care of those things and really limit what Alabama could do. I mean, you see Milroe have 3 interceptions. You see their leading rusher in that Oklahoma game have 45 yards, and Milroe only had 7. You see Ryan Williams only have 2 catches for 37 yards. I mean, you saw absolutely nothing work. So, to defend Alabama not being in, just take a recipe out of that book and copy and paste that, and you're going to be just fine. Now, Oklahoma's defense is better than most, to be honest with you.
Yeah, it's gonna be intriguing. That SEC championship game is gonna be interesting because it's looking like it's gonna be Texas Georgia, just as it sits right now. And I easily could see Georgia winning that game, and that there's a big wrench in the playoffs if that happens, because then obviously Georgia slides to the top 4, and then Texas will bump
Yes.
people out.
Yes.
I'm gonna
So,
go ahead.
go ahead, Dave.
I really think Georgia's a better team than Texas. Like I really do. Like I know their record is not what it
Well,
needs to
Georgia
be.
already beat them 30-15.
Well, that's what I'm
Exactly.
saying. I think they'll do it again. I'll be more shocked if Texas beats Georgia. So if if Texas does have that one loss, how far down does that drop then?
Well, if they add a loss to Georgia in the SEC championship game, it doesn't knock. Obviously, I'm not on the committee, so I can't speak to this. But I don't think it knocks them out. But I mean, they will still be in. Texas will still for sure be in with 2 losses. But dude, Texas has the hardest road ahead of any of these teams in this playoff because they played A&M, and then they're going to look like they're going to play Georgia. I mean, dude, that is horrendous last 2 games. I mean, they want to win those 2 so bad, besides the obvious reasons, because they just want that bye. They're going to need a breather after those 2 games. There ain't no doubt about that.
Yeah, the SEC's just been beating up on each other, and it's kind of shown here in these playoff rankings. I mean, there's 1, 2, 3. There's 7 teams in the SEC with 8 or more wins, and there's nothing like that in any other conference. But them beating up on each other has kind of thrown less teams in those top 12 than other conferences, like the Big Ten has 4. So you kind of seen that come to fruition. The gauntlet of the SEC has kind of hurt them in a way, but I definitely think if something wild happens in these last couple of weeks, you could probably see a 3-loss SEC team like Alabama sneak in.
Hey, I totally agree. Let's talk about a team real quick that has kind of completely shit the bed and that's not in the playoffs here. That I wasn't surprised tonight to not see them pop up in the playoffs. But Ole Miss, man, they They absolutely just completely shit the bed against Florida this last week. Congrats to Billy Napier and the Florida Gators for hitting their team total over a 5.5 with the game remaining. I mean, with the hardest schedule in the country by far and away. Congratulations to them. They're going bowling, and I don't know if they're gonna. They should beat Florida State, and the fact that they're gonna get to 7-5 on a year where everybody counted them out and said we were firing Billy Napier and they weren't winning 5 games. Congrats to them. But Ole Miss, man, that's horrible. I mean, you controlled your own destiny. You did everything the right way in some aspects. Like, you take care of business against a Georgia team. And then you come and take care of business against a good South Carolina football team, and you lose to Florida. Like, I don't know if they were just overlooking and trying to coast and just get by with the Florida Mississippi State thing and just get by and find their way to the playoffs. Man, but they completely shit the bed on themselves. And Lane Kiffin, after the interview last week where he talked about how no coaches in the SEC want to play in the SEC championship game, you look like a real dipshit right now after that conversation. I'm serious. I mean, you played yourself, dude. Congratulations.
And I mean, you see it. I'm looking at the SEC rankings. LSU, Missouri's ahead of them in the SEC rankings. So they've definitely shit the bed if those two teams are ahead of them in the rankings in the conference.
South Carolina's ahead of them. I mean, this is.
But you can argue. I mean, LSU and Mizzou's losses have been better than Ole Miss's have. I mean, Mizzou's losses are to South Carolina, A&M, and Alabama. Granted, they got blown out in 2 of those games. And LSU's
that was the only
losses,
thing I was going to push back on here with you is, dude, as much as I want to agree, and I totally agree, their losses are better. But I mean, they got absolutely mocked in 2 of those.
100%.
I mean, just never had a damn chance. And real quick, I mean, I know we got a lot of Mizzou listeners that listen to us, so we can spend a little bit of time on that. Is they shouldn't have lost the South Carolina game. I can't say they shouldn't have, but in all reality, they let South Carolina with like 1 minute and 10 seconds. So, I mean, at that point, you're sitting there thinking, dude, as long as nothing ignorant happens, and it did, but as long as nothing ignorant happens, they're sitting here with 2 losses, going to play an Arkansas team this weekend at home that they completely dominate, especially at home. We're looking at a Mizzou team that is probably getting in at 10-2 right now. And
100%.
It's once again, it's a damn shame. It's a damn shame. And I know the Brady Cook injuries, we could talk about that and how it didn't help things. It's a real damn shame because I think they have every piece on that football team to have made a playoff run. And I think if they just would have nudged out the South Carolina victory and not gave up, however long, whatever it ended up being, 65, 70 yards of drive at the end of the game of South Carolina, we're talking about a different situation here. We're having the conversation, Bryant, that we have so many times. Mizzou, just don't F up against Arkansas, and you're fine.
And they've taken care of business in recent years.
Dave, I want to kick your ass.
But yeah, Dave's laughing, but who cares? Anyway, in recent seasons, though, we've begged for Mizzou to win at least 7 games, and here we are, hopefully going to win 9. Right. So I'll take it.
You're right. 9-3. Hey man, 9-3 is a great season. And dude, I guess there's a catastrophic world where somehow Mizzou snuck in. Like, I don't see that happening. It's like a 2% chance.
We still have a chance.
I mean, it's got to be less than 5%. But
what needs to happen?
2.9. 2.9.
What needs to happen? I feel like there's got to be 35,000 different variables to go there.
I would say A&M would have to beat Texas.
Yep.
Clemson would have to beat South Carolina. Auburn would have to beat Alabama.
Yep.
And then
you're gonna somehow need SMU to lose this weekend because they're probably that team hovering. We saw they're hovering around in the back half of the rankings.
Yep. I don't know.
They play Cal.
It's very slim.
Like we talked about earlier.
It doesn't sound that bad.
Not gonna happen.
Cal almost beat Miami.
It doesn't sound that bad, Dave, but it doesn't sound that good. Well, let's focus on something here. Mizzou has to beat Arkansas too, like for that to ever.
Arkansas is not the
Arkansas is a good football team.
Yep,
they're a good football team. You put Arkansas in the Big 12, and they're probably in the playoffs. In all seriousness.
Yeah, Mizzou's only a 3-point favorite.
Yeah, so that's a serious question. To compare some of these conferences, you put Arkansas in the Big 12, they're probably making the playoffs. You put Arkansas in the ACC, they're probably banging it out against Miami in the ACC championship game. You Yeah, we don't put
And
them in the
they're
Big Ten. They'll get
and they're
mopped. But I mean,
11th in the SEC.
precisely my point. Precisely. I mean, this is why for me, I don't understand how only 3 SEC teams make it. I just don't. I don't because the first team out from the SEC was Alabama, and I'm the furthest thing from an Alabama fan. So let me make that clear for anybody that's listening. I am the furthest thing from an Alabama fan. I cannot stand them. I think what is happening to them right now is not hilarious because I'm a Mizzou fan, so we go through some shit, but it's funny. It was due time for them to not be in serious conversation, right? So, but I think you put Alabama in, and like we said earlier, they can beat any team in that top 12. They can beat Oregon. They can beat Ohio State. They can beat Miami. And I think they would beat Miami. They would mop the floor with SMU. They would mop the floor with Arizona State. I know a Big 12 school, has to make it, so I understand that one. But like, they mopped the floor with those guys. They would beat Penn State. Like, I mean, it's crazy to me that only 3 SEC schools make it. I'm serious.
Yeah, that's just the way it's falling right now. But I mean, I think it'll be shaken up. I think if I were a bet man, I'd say there's going to be 4 SEC teams in there somehow. A team wins like
I, I
7.
I think the loser of the ACC conference championship game does not make it.
So there will only
I
be
think-
one ACC team.
I think
Yes.
if SMU loses, yes, they're out. But I think what if Miami loses? What if Miami loses to SMU? What does that do?
Then Miami's probably out.
I still
You leave
yes.
Miami
I
out,
don't know.
11-1 Miami out.
Well,
Yeah,
they'd be.
because dude, let me pull up their schedule. Let's look at their best wins. And
I think they
I've
have
campaigned for Miami all season.
This is going to be a Florida State situation all over again.
Miami's best win is Louisville in Florida. I mean, that's their best wins. And Duke. If you classify 8-3 Duke as a good football team. And I respect to them, they're 8-3. But I mean, a Louisville win by a touchdown. And a Florida, I mean, you kicked the shit out of Florida. And like, Bryant's talked about on here before, and I tried to bury it because I had the Miami team total wins over. So I kept trying to just bury it and hide it in the dust and get past it. But should have lost to Virginia Tech and should have lost to Cal.
Mm-hmm.
So who do you bring in though from the SEC? Like
Bama.
Alabama.
If they beat Auburn, and they should, it's the Iron
That's
Bowl.
what I'm
So they
saying.
should. They're in.
There will be a 3-loss team in the college football playoff, and if I were a bet man right now, it'll either be Clemson or Alabama.
do you think they throw Alabama in if they went out just because they're Alabama?
Probably not Clemson. Alabama for sure.
I was gonna say I'm gonna push back on the Clemson thing just a little bit because if we're not putting the ACC conference loser in,
Correct.
I cannot find a world where and I'm not saying they wouldn't because the playoff committee is asinine, but like I would lose my shit on our next show if that were to be the case. Like that cannot happen.
But I could definitely see Alabama in, like we talked about, bunch here tonight at 3
So
losses.
like, God, and I hate continuing to talk about them because I can't stand them. But I mean, Alabama has beat Georgia. All right. Alabama has beat South Carolina. Alabama has beat the dog shit out of Mizzou. Alabama has beat the dog shit out of LSU. Give me another team that has wins like that outside of the SEC. There's not.
No.
Maybe I can't even say Oregon or Ohio State. Like Oregon has beat Ohio State, and which don't get me wrong, fantastic win. Probably the best win of anybody in the playoffs, but it's about it if I remember correctly. I don't think they've ran through the gauntlet of anybody else. Indiana doesn't have those wins. Indiana's best wins, probably Michigan, just going off the top of my head. And unless I'm forgetting somebody there too, please remind me. Penn State, hard game against Ohio State, lost it. So like they're an SMU and Miami don't even come close. Arizona State doesn't even come close. I would truly say maybe if you truly respect the service academies, maybe Notre Dame.
Mm-hmm.
But then again, and I know Dave's laughing because we were together watching the service academy games this weekend, and I was screaming respect your service academies, hoping they would beat Notre Dame. So the Notre Dame's out of the equation. We ain't got to talk about this shit. But I mean, if you respect those wins, then I would say maybe Notre Dame because they beat Texas A&M. Like that's, I don't know. That's just the way I feel, and that's not the SEC homer coming out. And that is the absolute truth. Like you cannot look at me right now and tell me that the SEC teams deserve a little bit more respect than the rest.
I definitely think they do, just because I mentioned earlier they have as much of a gauntlet as it always is every year, especially this season in the SEC. That even winning a game on any given Sunday in that or Saturday, excuse me, on that conference is probably a better win than 95% of the rest of the country.
And I forgot Oregon did beat Boise State by 3, and reminder
Yes, I
that's
was
Boise
going to
State's
mention
only
that.
loss.
Mm-hmm.
So, like I said earlier in the show too, I don't know if you two agree with me. This is for Oregon to lose, right? Like they are by far and away the number 1 team in the country, in my opinion. And obviously the rankings show that, but like I think that looking back every year, you kind of have that conversation where you're like, okay, there's 2 teams that can actually truly win this whole entire thing. Right now, in my opinion, I think it's just 1 team, and that is Oregon. And I think after that, it's fairly wide open through those top 12 that we just saw in the playoff rankings.
Absolutely agree.
I think they're the only ones that have shown to be good week in and week out.
Now, that Wisconsin game was way too close for comfort for them. I mean, a 3-point win to Wisconsin. Yikes.
But I guess what I'm saying is like comparing it to everybody else that got a loss, you know, like even though it wasn't.
No, I agree. They
got them out.
I agree with you. Yep, I agree with you. Just like
let me ask you guys something.
Weekend.
Besides those 2 teams, what's another team in this top 12 you think that can make some noise?
Like you mean like a team, like not like a top 4 team? Or
no, I'm just going off what's shown right now in the bracket. If it started tomorrow, with these 12 teams, besides Oregon and Ohio State, who do you think can make some noise?
Oh man,
go ahead, Dave, because I'm going to make a case for.
I think it's 2 teams that can make some noise.
All right, I got 3, so I'm anxious to hear what you have to say, Dave. Give me a team that you got in mind here.
Man, I don't really know, like, or at least somebody that I would say I'm confident that they can hold their own.
All right, well, me and Brian will go and tell us who you be the difference on this. Brian, I'm going to give you 1. You're going to give me 1. I'm going to give you 1. You're going to give me 1. And I'm going to give you my last one just because I have 3 and you have 2. My first one that I would say I have the most confidence in. God, now I kind of got 4. I'm going to say Georgia would be my first pick.
Okay.
For all the obvious reasons, right? Just for all the obvious reasons.
Yeah, that was one of my teams, and truly, I think Notre Dame is my other pick. I know they have that bad loss, but they've been beating the brakes off people the past 4 weeks. Jeremiah Love is a stud.
It's absolute animal.
Riley
STO
Leonard
pride.
has been playing very, very well too. He's kind of figured it out after the first month of the season.
I agree.
Flying. So personally, I think Notre Dame is the team that can make the most noise out of the top 12. That's not Ohio State or Oregon.
I agree. You want to know the only reason I think that they can't? Marcus Freeman.
True.
You see him, he is like Mario Cristobal-esque and like do the dumbest of shit at the most unopportune times.
Yeah, he's a very what's the word I'm looking for? Inadvantageous coach when it comes to playing the game while the game's actually going on. Like
overthinks it.
Yes, way overthinks it.
Like you lose to Stanford, you lose to Marshall, you lose to Northern Illinois. What in God's name are you doing? Like, and I think on paper, yes, Brian, their defense is incredible. They have great cornerbacks, great run game. Riley Leonard has proven to grow as the season's gone on, so that's huge for them. And I do agree with you. Now, I want to throw 2 other things at you, and the one coach I just mentioned, I truly do think Miami can win it all. And the only reason they can't is just like Marcus Freeman is Mario Cristobal. Now, Miami's defense is not as good in any way, shape, or form compared to Notre Dame's here, but Miami can outscore anybody. If they ramp it up, and let me put it to you like this: pick a quarterback in the top 12 better than Cam Ward. I can't. I truly can't.
I mean, my only other maybe would be Dylan Gabriel, but that's it. I still think Cam Ward's better.
Yes, like if I'm down 7 in the fourth quarter, I'm down 6 in the fourth quarter, and I have a quarterback that I have to hand the ball to in this playoff rankings and say, dude, go get us 7 to go to the college football national championship so we have a chance to win it. I'm picking Cam Ward, and I'm
Mhm.
picking Miami's offense over the rest of them too.
And another reason I agree with you, if you look at, this is the first year for 12 teams, but if you look at the past, what has it been, 10 seasons that we've had the CFP, those games where it's only the 4 teams, they're not 14-10, they're not 17-13 games. They're like 48-40. So you almost need to have an offense as high powered as Miami to even, have a chance in the game. It seems like they're always high scoring.
Yep.
Defense kind of goes out the window.
I mean, look at the bullshit TCU pulled out of their ass. I mean, I'm not saying I
Hmm.
could that, and they got waxed in the championship, but like this, to your point, yes, Miami is the best offense in my opinion in the playoff 12 as it sits. He is the best quarterback in my opinion in the playoff 12. Now, I still think Oregon is better, but obviously your question was to pick outside of Oregon and Ohio State, which is why I think Miami, to me, is the next best option. I think
Hmm.
the shit at Texas going on. Quinn Ewers is kind of banged up. I heard today again, and
Yep.
the Arch Man. They clearly don't feel as comfortable going back to Arch Manning anymore. I think that looms huge down the stretch. I My other pick for you, if I had to pick one more that could truly do it, is Tennessee, because Tennessee's opposite side of this, and going against what you just said. Tennessee's defense is incredible, one of the best in this playoff 12 right here. And if Nico could just play a slightly above average football game, they could beat any of these teams on this playoff 12 ranking right now.
Oh, 100%. I mean, I think they're up there with Miami's with having one of the more higher powered offenses in these top 12
Yes.
teams. So, um, if their defense can stop the other team, which, like we mentioned, doesn't necessarily seem to be the case usually in these CFP games, but it could definitely play a factor. But I agree with you. Tennessee could also make some noise if they can kind of wrangle together and play like they're capable to. Because I think we all can agree. I don't think Tennessee has still played their best game.
No, no. They're running out of time,
They
but
are running out of time. So,
they have not. And if they do, and I know we've said that for like 5 weeks now, but if they do, look out. And like if they find it at the right time, teams are in trouble. The teams are in
mhm.
for, and I think that could be huge. They have to find it, but it could be huge because like teams aren't prepared for something like that. You know what I'm saying? Like they're right now they're just scripting against Tennessee based off what they've seen so far. They're not scripting on what they could be. And if Tennessee, and I like Josh Heupel, I think Josh Heupel's a great coach, and so I think they really could do it. And that was a great question. I love that question. And for me, gentlemen, honestly, I don't really have a whole lot more to add to this. I think we dissected this 10 ways from
Yeah.
Sunday, and that's what we're here for, and I love it. I wish this could have been live because it would have been even better. But I
Hmm.
mean, I think we dissected the hell out of this. So I don't have a whole lot more to add to it, really.
Yeah, I think we dove into it really well with the playoffs and what's shown right now, knowing we really only have 2 more weeks left before we know the final actual real world playoff scenario. Um, there's not a whole lot of major implication games coming up this week that's going to factor into what's going to change maybe these top 12 teams or teams sliding in, but conference championship weekend definitely will, as it always does. So we'll see what comes out of that weekend. But um, exciting few weeks coming up here for our college football fans and us here on the network.
Hey,
Absolutely.
absolutely, absolutely. We always try to give you our honest opinion, and it's not going to be sugarcoated. We're not going to copy anybody else. It's going to be what we think, whether we're right or wrong. So we'll see where this playoffs takes us, and we may be talking about the same teams. We may be talking about some crazy upsets at this point. That's what I'm expecting because it has been a hell of a year. I think we should have done this 12-team playoff a long time ago because I am loving it. I'm loving seeing the upsets, loving seeing the big wins. But hey, we'll see how it goes. I'm gonna shoot it over to Colin, and then you got it from here, Colin.
Hey, I'm glad we're all back. I know we're going to come on later in the week, and we're probably going to be a man or two down just based on the holidays. But hey, after we get through this week, we are all systems go at the right time. The playoffs will really be ramping up then. We'll have even more answers, be going into conference championship weekends. I want to try and do this as long as these guys are able to as well. I want to try to do this every week from this point forward. I don't think any of the other shit that we cover really matters anymore. I do want to do a little game review on the big stuff, but I think for me, and if I was a listener of a show, I am solely focused at this point on the college playoffs, and I really want us to really hammer this down from this point forward. I want us to give our takes. I think after the last week, we can really talk about who got left out, who we thought should have been in over them. And that's what I think we should focus on going forward. So you're probably going to hear the Heisman conversation really dwindle down. Congratulations, Dave. It looks like you were right this whole time, even though I think it's a total crock of shit. I don't think Travis Hunter in any way, shape, or form should ever win this award over Ashton Genty. I think that's absolutely asinine. But hey, we're not going to dwell on that shit too much anymore.
He pulled the Desmond Howard pose this weekend.
Yeah, I mean, that's just hey, whatever. They're lucky that I don't have a vote, I guess. But
They lost
but
to
yeah,
our
we're gonna
beloved Kansas Jayhawks.
yeah, congratulations, Travis Hunter. Watch Ashton Genty play in the second weekend of the playoffs because he got a first round bye, and he did that, not his team. Shall I remind you? But yeah, going forward, we'll try to be back here this Thursday and probably come out Friday, revisit how we are on an absolute cold streak from hell on our betting. I think we might be all the way back to even when we had like a 12 or 13 game lead the last 2 weeks. The wheels have completely fallen off. Maybe we were hitting the bottle too hard during deer season, had our minds all faded. But hey, however you want to look at that, whatever you want to blame it on, I think we're back to even now. Hopefully things shake up better for us the rest of the way. But gentlemen, this was tons of fun as always. I love doing the playoff conversation. And like I said, we're really going to hone on this moving forward for you guys out there. Any questions, comments, concerns, make sure you leave it to us. Anything you want to add that you don't think we are right about, anything that you want to add that you disagree with, think somebody else should be in, hey, hit us up, let us know. We'll gladly have that conversation. Gonna try to do some homework on how to get live with all of us going into the next week. We thought we had it down, and hey, I guess not. But we're coming at this raw, no edits. We're coming at you right after we get done here. I'm gonna post it up as soon as I get it in my file, and should be up. Hey, the same night as the selection committee dropped their playoff teams. But that's Bryant. That's Dave. Follow us on Facebook at Deep Threat Sports Network. X at DT_sports_. Instagram Deep Threat Sports with a Z. Goodness, I can't talk right now. TikTok Deep Threat Sports Network. YouTube at Deep Threat Sports. Spotify Deep Threat Sports. Bryant, Dave, appreciate you, gentlemen. Hey, until next time, fellas. Peace.